Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Justin Butlion. I'm pronouncing that right, Justin? Butlion,
Yes,
right?
well done.
Okay, founder at projectBI and Hawkeye Ventures. It's not his first company. Also did Feed.io, I see in 2014, and the Analyst's Playbook as of late. Worked at Yotpo. I used Yotpo in the early days, and first company I believe was in 2011, right? B Mark, Justin.
Well, BMark was my first attempt at a SaaS startup right out of university, but that didn't really go anywhere, so I had to shut
Right.
it down
Every
after
good
about.
entrepreneurs have that they launch something at uni level. I think I already had like a couple of companies back then. And yeah, you're from Israel. Well, you're originally from South Africa, lived in Israel, and now you're digital nomading. So we're both in Mexico. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and yeah, what you're up to nowadays?
Yeah, so I really see myself as an entrepreneur. I've been on my own. I left Yotpo, my previous company, in 2017. Since then, I've been, living as a digital nomad and kind of climbing up the ladder. I started as a freelancer. Basically, I took the skills I learned at Yotpo. I started to provide services to companies, mostly in Israel, but not exclusively. Then in March of 2018, I left Israel, became a digital nomad, and I've been traveling, ever since. So about 8 years now. Living as a minimalist. I basically live out of a suitcase. Everything I own, I take with me on the plane as carry-on, just to simplify things even further. And it's been an exciting last 8 years. Visited, quite a few countries at this point. A lot of time in Asia. More recently in Mexico. I'm in Mexico City now. I was here last year for 5 months. I plan to be here probably 5-6 months. Then head down to Argentina and Brazil for the first time. But a lot of time in Spain, a lot of time in Thailand. I was in Vietnam for 18 months during COVID. So yeah, I've seen a lot of places and really enjoy the lifestyle. I'm also very much a workaholic, so don't get me wrong. I'm not like climbing mountains and going hiking. I'm sitting in co-working spaces and coffee shops in front of the laptop. My goal really at this point in my life is to build wealth, become financially independent, improve as an entrepreneur. And yeah, it's been going well. Last year we kind of broke even, but actually last year was small growth. So every year I've managed to make more money than the previous. I run projectBI, which is a business intelligence agency for D2C e-commerce businesses. So it's a fancy way of saying we help large Shopify businesses, typically mid 8 and 9-figure businesses, set up data warehousing, automated reporting, help their analysts really leverage their data. So it's very much a niche. Before that, I was working with SaaS companies doing similar work, but mainly focused on product analytics, helping them understand if they're at product market fit, how to grow, retention, churn, all that kind of fancy stuff. So I've been working in the data space, you could say, for over a decade at this point.
Right. You're going to love Mexico. You might stay there longer than you think. I did Argentina as well. It's epic, right? Like the coffee shops, the steakhouses, the horse races, the culture there is very much Parisian. I didn't like the people much in Argentina, although I do love the crypto founders in there. The Web3 culture is very strong, but the people there are very stressed, So for that, do Chile as well. Chile is like
okay.
super near.
I'll add that to my list.
Yeah, Costa Rica, that's another must do.
I've done Costa Rica. I love Costa Rica.
Yeah, Costa Rica is amazing. And yeah, we both shared a very similar journey. What have you learned from being a nomad for all these times? Because I attribute it to one of my strongest growth spurs in life. My first one was entrepreneurship. The second one was meeting my wife, committing to marriage and so forth. And the third one was being a digital nomad. So what have you got from your journey so far?
Well, I think, I think the main thing I've taken from this lifestyle is just, you make it, it's on you to make it what it is. So, I could just stay home all day versus going out trying to meet people. I've become a lot more extroverted as a result. When you're living the typical 9 to 5, you're in a bubble, it's very comfortable. You've got to kind of become a bit more street smart, understand how things work in different cultures, being able to adapt, being good at research. So, before I land in a place, where am I going to stay, which areas, all the logistical side is important when you're a nomad. But, like there's pros and cons. It's a very lonely lifestyle. That's probably the hardest part. You try and make friends, but also people understand you're not going to be around for very long, so they're not going to put too much effort into getting to know you very well, is something I found. So that's the tough part, but overall it gives me a level of freedom. I'm also like a big believer in, being in a place where I don't have to stress about money. So like I was living in Tel Aviv before, and just the cost of living got so high. It's worse today than it was even back then. And just sitting in a coffee shop, getting, a coffee and a sandwich and paying, $15, $20 for it. And this was like 7-8 years ago. And you feel like you're just being ripped off, and it's like you can't relax and really focus on stuff because you're always like worried about the money side. So the opposite then, going to Vietnam, which has been the cheapest location I've been to, where you can live in a hotel for $400 a month, and live like a king. So you make sacrifices. You're not around the same, like I said, it's lonely. You don't really, the whole social pillar of life is not really being worked on, which is sad in a way, but it kind of suits me because, like I said, I'm focused on building my businesses, growing as a person. Self-development's a big part of my life as well. And like I said, making money, building wealth, and understanding. I don't know if you know the book, what's it called? The Fast Lane or something. I forget the name exactly,
MJ Guy?
Yeah, exactly. I forget the name. It's a
MJ
really good
Marco?
book. Exactly.
The
So,
Millionaire Fast Lane
The
or something like
Millionaire
that?
Fast Lane. That's it. So, I read that book many years ago, and that also made a big impact on me and kind of helped me understand how the world really works in terms of working for someone, earning the salary, paying high taxes versus being an entrepreneur and building assets and, having a level of freedom that most people don't ever have. And that
Yeah.
was really appealing. So there's been different things. Tim Ferriss was also a big motivation for me.
For sure.
The 4-hour work week,
Yeah.
changed my life as well. And I think just part of my personality is like, I like to question things. I don't take things at face value. I'm very inquisitive. I always want to learn. And I'm also very lucky to be born in this day and age where you've got technology, and I can, I've got a fully remote team. I've got an account manager in Argentina, does fantastic work for the company. Never met her, right? We work over video and Slack, and she's helped me grow my business significantly in the last 2 years. So it's just incredible we can do this kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I went through all of this. Like, I think the next phase you might hit is getting tired of that life and then settling down eventually. Like I did that after 6 or 7 years of nomading, and I also let go of my full team and replaced them with AI agents. And that's also like another big phase that happened. And yeah, you've nailed it. I mean, I'm introverted as well, and digital nomading is always a good outlet, not necessarily to connect with one person at a time, but with the culture and to absorb it. And yeah, my favorite moment was like booking these Airbnbs, right? Like that's always the best part, like selecting an Airbnb with a views. I had assistants booking them for me at some point. So yeah, it's a great life. But I think it's also like how we are, like even if we would be settling in some space, I've settled in Oaxaca since like a year and a half and haven't made much friend. I'm like so much in my business, a workaholic just like you. So it's always a challenge. I guess that's why Nomad's List got somewhat popular, right, by Peter Levels. Not sure if you know about that, but yeah, that guy is pretty intense. He lived in Chiang Mai, and yeah, in Thailand as well. Hanoi is a top destination. So let me ask you this: your business, you mentioned that you break even, right? Like, and you're running agencies. when I start in agencies, usually the margins of profits are pretty insane. They're like 90% plus. So tell me about the breaking even thing there. Is that because you spend $5,000 a month on Airbnbs, or?
No, so when I say the business broke even, to be honest, it was small growth. I think it was like 4% growth, year over year in top line revenue. But we were basically just under capacity last year. Like I had put all the pieces in place except really a lead gen, marketing engine that could bring me enough business. And like I mentioned, we're kind of pretty niche in a pretty small TAM. I've moved up market pretty aggressively in the last 2-3 years, just because I needed to. It's a pretty complex model overall when you're doing custom infrastructure work for D2C businesses which don't have a CTO or there's a lot of kind of interesting aspects to it. So in order to kind of make the business work, I had to go up market, which shrinks the TAM, and then you're now doing kind of enterprise level sales in a way where our typical project will be 15 to 30,000 for a 4 to 6 week project, and then moving on to a pretty sizable retainer of 7 to 12K. So LTV is very high for us, but we need to find the right. We need to find the right businesses at the right size at the right time. So there's a lot of kind of aspects to the marketing which is challenging, and that's probably the biggest weakness in the business. And I've taken, spent a lot of the last 2 years trying to crack that. And last year it just didn't really work out. So we were just under capacity, which means, if you're under capacity, then your margins aren't great. So, but
Right.
You're right. Typically the margins in a agency are going to be pretty good. It's cash flowing business, it's good. And that's why I like it, as a stepping stone. If we have time, we can talk about Hawkeye Ventures, which is basically my software business, which is, acquiring and developing SaaS products. And
Yeah, we're gonna get to that one.
and
It's very interesting.
yeah,
I think your value with Project BI is definitely there, right? Because data is so scrambled in these companies. You just aggregate that, and they absolutely need an agency, and AI cannot do that, right? Maybe the GTM is the problem. Tell me a bit more about your go-to-market approach.
well, like I said, I've been working on that heavily the last 2 years, really leveraging, I'd say, content marketing, social media. So very heavy on LinkedIn, partnerships, connecting. I'm pretty well known, I would say, in the industry as a whole. So that's helped. A lot of referrals is how we typically get new business. Technological partnerships has also worked for a time, but I think the D2C market's also gone through a lot of ups and downs, especially in the last 2-3 years. So I think part of the reason we were break even last year was just the market being a bit hesitant to spend money on new initiatives. And, a business that's like stuck on Excel and, logging into Google Analytics and Shopify to get their numbers, to now make the step to spend, low 6 figures a year and actually implementing the BI infrastructure, the skills, the resources, is a big step. So our sales process is also pretty long at times, because you've got to educate the client or educate the lead on what all of this means, get them to think long term. So a lot of times, they're happy to spend money on a project when it's a short term project with clear ROI. But when you're implementing, data warehouse and custom reporting, it's difficult to kind of see that ROI in a short time frame. So they're a bit hesitant to go that route at times. So yeah, I'm still honestly trying to work it out. The good news is, we're a small agency. We're 2 full-time employees, myself, and then 2 or 3 freelancers that fill in certain roles. So when I say we were under capacity, we had maybe 3 clients, where at 5 clients we're at full capacity. You know what I mean?
Right.
And very high margins. So I'm not overly stressed about it. Things have turned around recently. I'm in talks with 2 hot, I'd call them hot leads at this moment. I've sent proposals to both of them. So yeah, things
Yes.
are in a good position at the moment.
Surface level, I would probably just automate a couple of steps in the process, right? If you're gonna get to overcapacity, and nowadays I'm like vibe coding quite a lot of Chrome extension apps to automate the shit out of my business, and probably like 80% at this point is automated, and I can take almost limitless amounts of clients. I'm pretty sure I would top at 50. I have like around 15 right now, so. And yeah, just like quick stuff on top of my mind because I talk to like so many business owners like you. I think 10K March. Yeah, I would not target like big companies because I do cold email, and that means getting their spam filters, hitting decision makers that are like way too complicated to deal with. I like dealing with CEOs and founders, so I would sort of go mid-size, and I would sort of reduce the prices as well. That's how I would do it. I'd send a cold email asking them if they want a plan, an ROI plan with timelines, pricing, what it would look like. Then they say yes to that, and after that, I send them the full plan with AI, right? And AI builds a full plan, is prompted on your brain, and the stats on that, I'm getting 1% reply rate. So every 100 emails that I send, I get a yes. And I send them the plan, and I get 50% conversion rate on meetings. So every 200 emails, I'm getting one meeting, and one meeting out of three will close. So that's pretty intense, and I'm getting like 5 to 7 meetings per day. Let's talk about Hawkeye Ventures. Tell me a bit more about that one, because I have the exact same philosophy. I create money with my agencies, and then I reinvest it in SaaS solutions. So tell us a bit more about that one.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story. Back in 2022, like, the agency was doing all right. We had some cash in the bank, and as an entrepreneur, right, I don't want the money just sitting in the bank, losing value. I was thinking, what am I going to do with it? The obvious one would be, invest in the S&P 500, just dollar cost average, get your 10% a year. And I was kind of looking for ways, what can I do with this cash? And I was very fortunate to come across the story of Andrew Wilkinson. I don't know if you've heard of the guy,
Of course,
Canadian
fellow Canadian.
entrepreneur. Yeah, and on the my first million podcast, and like I
Yeah,
got
still best
obsessed with the.
podcast.
Yeah, I dive really deep into his content, listen to all his, every time he spoke online that I could find, and I'm like, okay, this
Billionaire
guy kind of.
Barista book.
Yeah, I've read his book. I'm a big fan of his, but he kind of gave me the blueprint because he had a similar, story. He started with agency, then he went into acquisitions. I'm like a fan of, Warren Buffett and that whole value investing philosophy. So I decided, also I was a bit tired of the agency at that time. I was looking for also an exit, strategy in a way, and I decided. It's a bit of a longer story, but I ended up setting up all my businesses in the US. Up until that point, I was just a freelancer, paying my taxes in Israel. So I said, okay, let's set up actual business entities in the US. I created Hawkeye Ventures as a C Corp in Delaware. It's basically a holding company that now owns projectBI, which is its own entity. And I basically set up a structure where I can move money now from projectBI, all the profits, into Hawkeye Ventures and use that as a vehicle to either develop or acquire SaaS. And since November of 2022, I've acquired 3 micro SaaS. In total,
Okay.
this year they'll do about $62,000 more or less on autopilot. So I buy
Okay.
mature, simple products that have kind of a growth engine built in. So a lot of things like Slack apps or an app with virality built in. So I don't have an R&D team. I've got like one of my 2 full-time staff with projectBI is kind of a developer, so she helps with different things. But these acquisitions are just cash cows, slow growing, 20, 25% a year. And it's been really exciting. And now it's like owning digital real estate, but with better margins and better fundamentals. So it's been exciting to do that. And I plan to, if I can do one acquisition a year, it starts to snowball. The next one I want to be pretty much more sizable. So I've done one. The first one was 47,000. The second one was 97,000, and the third one was actually 36,000, but just good economics. The next one I want to be 200,000 plus. I might even bring in some friends and do kind of a syndicated deal, just to help out. But long term, the goal is to just build a lot of MRR from SaaS that's running pretty low, more or less on autopilot. And then, cash flow is king. So, every month right now, I'm getting about 3 to 4K from the SaaS. And it can also feed other things. So you mentioned Feedio earlier. I don't know if we have time to get into too much detail on that, but Feedio was the second startup I tried to launch over 10 years ago. I had a co-founder at the time, and it's also a long story, but after a few years of working on it, didn't really go anywhere. We put it on hold. And last year I decided to restart it. So I acquired it fully from my ex-co-founder. And now I'm taking essentially profits from the SaaS that I've acquired to invest back into Feedio. And yesterday, I'm happy to announce we launched Feedio 2.0 with like 6 months of dev work. And that's really the big play for this year, is to try and get Feedio to product market fits, make some money through it, then potentially raise a round and kind of start transitioning a lot more aggressively into the SaaS. So I've got a lot of different, I'm watering a lot of different plants. And even though the agency is doing well, right? We did 240K last year. Like I said, pretty low margin, like wasn't a lot of profit, but that's, I did pay myself a decent salary. This year, hopefully we'll pass 300K with better margins. And then, you've got the 60K from the SaaS on autopilot. And then there's also Feedio and Project Echo, which is another SaaS we started to develop last year. If either of those two kind of take off and start generating MRR, then we'll be in a fantastic place.
Yeah, it's a nice little portfolio. I like the strategy. We both very much think alike. What's your time return window on SaaS? Is it 5 years, the ROI you're looking for?
It's even more aggressive than that. Like I'd like to get the money back within 3 years, 3 to 3.5 years, something like that. My second acquisition is done fantastically well. It's really the kingpin in the portfolio, and it will do about 50K on its own.
And why do you think it was such a good pick? How did you pick the software there?
Yeah, so I actually wrote a very long Substack about it, but it's a Slack app called Meet Slack. It's basically you integrate it within your Slack workspace, and then it makes it really easy to initiate Google Meet sessions directly from Slack. So, a lot of people working with Google workspaces, they work with Google, Meet. So instead of opening up a new tab, doing, meet.google.com, copying the link, going back into Slack, all you have to do is write /meet. And I'd already used this app before I acquired it, and I could see immediately the value. And, it just sits on the Slack marketplace. And
how many paid users did it had when you acquired it?
I think around 200 at the time. So it was doing around 24, 25K a year when I bought it. This was 2.5 years ago. But once again, it's very, very low churn. This is another key. So less than 2% monthly churn. And it's a slow grower. But I just like the fundamentals. Super simple, easy, low maintenance. Very, very high churn, B2B, sitting on a marketplace where it gets a lot of exposure. And every week we get 30 to 40 installs of some crazy brands. I mean, I've got Mr. Beast is using it. I've got, care.com, Aircall, on and on and on, right? Because it's anyone who uses Slack could find and using Google, workspaces will find value from it. So, the one thing that goes against it is it's kind of a nice to have. So the conversion to paid is very low. But once again, I don't care because I'm getting, hundreds of installs a month for free. There's no marketing budget. There's no CMO. It just sits and prints money, and it's growing organically about 25% a year. Yeah, and then I was kind of smart. I changed the pricing model a bit where I have an enterprise plan. So anyone who has more than 500 members in their workspace, if they want to upgrade to a paid plan, have to pay $2 per member. So it's uncapped.
Yep.
And I've got 3 clients that have 3 subscribers that have paid me over $1,500 a year on that plan. So that's another cool thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating how shortcuts like that. By the way, these would take like minutes, hours at most to code nowadays with vibe
Right.
coding, which brings me to the next point. I think most of these small companies, these indie hackers, will need to learn GTM, which is still very hard nowadays, like how to get to market. And I think you're about to get more of these competitors with GTM behind them, so sort of gonna
Right.
need to invest in that. But Justin, let's book a round two for next year because yeah, we have like way more to talk till then. Where can people find
Definitely.
out more about you?
So I'd say number one would be LinkedIn. Just look up my name, or I guess go to projectbi.net and just contact me through the contact form. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and then I'm also on X, a bit less so, but I'm there as well. And then Justin at projectbi.net if you want my email.
Justin.